welcome everybody to yet another beautiful HR Circle chit chat. I'm so happy to have everybody here. As I always say, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the globe. And here with me are Sherry and Luke, that you're familiar with already. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to do the bell. You know the drill. And I'm happy to welcome today Jon Reed. Jon Reed has been around for some time. I'm not going to go out on a limb to say how long, but I'll let him comment on that if he wishes. But anyway, he has been uh, one of the founders of Diginomica. He has been working on enterprise and a technology, HR technology, blogging, video casting, podcasting on every topic you may imagine when it actually hit the technology mark. And sometimes also on strategy. Um, he advises customers on go-to-market approach, business to business, content strategy, what to do and when to do it. Welcome, Jon. We're so happy to have you.
Oh, thank you. I really like this topic and this group of people. So let's see if we can get us some trouble.
Okay, let's go.
Excellent.
I'm in.
Do we want to get in trouble ourselves or get someone else in trouble? I don't know. I
Well,
prefer
let's
the second
decide as we
proposition.
go. How about that?
Fair enough. Fair enough. So we thought we'd drill you because I've seen some of your posts on artificial intelligence recently, and I thought it'd be perfect to drill on that topic.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And in an HR context, it's interesting because I was just spending a little time reviewing the EU AI Act, and they divided all future AI into 4 risk areas. And the high risk area, which is the second highest, includes things like critical infrastructure and law enforcement, but it also includes educational and vocational training, employee management of workers, and then the unacceptable risk section includes things such as employment, education, so for example, social scoring based on social behavior, emotional recognition in the workplace. So that they even put that in the unacceptable category. So what that tells us, I think, is that HR and AI is high stakes stuff, right?
Yeah.
Now, granted, when you look at things like posting job descriptions, which is one of the quote unquote slow hanging fruit use cases, it's hard to imagine getting into that much trouble doing that. But the point is, there's a lot of really sensitive data and high stakes stuff in HR that is going to come under regulatory scrutiny. And that's going to be an interesting wake up call for companies because unfortunately, I think a lot of companies are taking a kind of move fast and break things approach to AI at times. And that's not going to work in HR. So that's one thing. And there's a couple other really interesting
Never
points.
works in HR, Jon. Never.
No, it doesn't, and it's not going to work here. And there's a couple really other interesting points. I just had an interview with Philip Herzig, who runs AI for SAP, and I'm about to publish a piece on AI strategy at SAP. So this is like new content. And one of the big things that he really doubled down on how important it is to have clean data, and for that reason, why the SaaS applications are going to be a really, really important area. So that's an interesting sort of subtext around HR, which is that, so for example, SAP's first use of what's called RAG or
Yeah, I think we're
bringing in help documentation into Joule. So not only is HR in the spotlight, but success factors in particular is in the spotlight. And finally, I'll just say one more thing, and then I'll shut up and see what you guys think. The there's been all kinds of different experiments in how to get the most out of AI, and there's a lot of debates around to what extent the human element in implementation. So, for example, like, are we going to do reinforcement learning? Do we need domain experts to contribute? Like, this is wrong, this is right. There's a lot of debate on how out of the box AI can be and still make a difference. But one thing that's pretty much agreed upon through all the vendors I talk with in the enterprise is that customer data is going to be at the core of why enterprise AI is better. And so that's the final component for HR customers, which is what is the state of your data? Because the data that you're using in different applications and trying to make sense of from an HR standpoint is going to factor heavily into the success of whatever AI projects you undertake.
Well, even for the simplest use cases, you mentioned recruitment. And even there, you can get in trouble because you know the diversity laws that change around the world are difficult to follow. But yet again, even in the simplest use case, if the data behind the data, the organizational data that recruitment rests on in the end, the skill data the recruitment must rest on is not correct, well, the whole construction falls down. I've already said
Yep.
many times, it's like, with the wrong data, you may run faster, but in the wrong direction. And that's not very helpful.
Yep.
Yep.
John,
So-
how do you see SaaS helping the data
Well,
quality?
because it forces a journey towards standardization.
Mm,
There's only so much deviation you can achieve in a SaaS software context. Now, that doesn't mean I think there's some SaaS instances that are customized enough that could also cause some problems. But Herzig was very interesting because he was just very honest with me that the biggest successes they've had are with much more standardized data, and where they've run into more challenges with customers is around heavily customized, and complicated data sets. And it does make sense. And so, and also a lot of AI does take place in cloud-based scenarios where the data resides in the cloud. The algorithms tend to reside there, and so that's why SAP is going to be putting a focus on a lot of AI functionality for its SaaS-based applications. So it's just an interesting area that will kind of reinforce, I think, a lot of the clean core mantras that SAP has, because SAP started talking about clean core stuff long before AI came into focus. One other really interesting thing that I think will be interesting for Luke to grapple with, because Luke, in our last podcast that I interviewed you on, you made some really good points around how customers mostly care about results. And I think that's true in the sense that customers just want to get things done and improve their business models and save costs and automate things. They don't care whether it's AI. They don't
right.
they don't care whether it's blockchain. They'll take whatever works, you know. But I do think there is an interesting little twist with AI, and that's Luke's position, right? I think I've summarized it accurately. And I fundamentally agree with Luke's position in general, but AI is a little bit of a twist because what you run into in companies is employees freelancing with free AI tools like Chat GPT types
Yes.
tools. And if that's the problem with that's why customers do have to find a response to this, which is like, we need something in place so that we need sensible ways of controlling this and funneling people towards like alternatives towards freelancing on these tools. Shadow AI is pretty dangerous. I mean, shadow IT has been around for a long time, but shadow AI is kind of dangerous. And so that's why there is some pressure on customers to adopt like responsible versions of these tools. And so I think that's the one twist I would say towards just wait until you can get a result with it. So anyway, that may be something for Luke to grapple with a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, in all of this, the one thing I'm kind of hearing underlying in the use of AI is not actually AI and not actually technology, but is how organizations are managing themselves. What processes have they got in place to ensure that the data is correct? Like what processes do they have in place to make sure people are using authorized tools and not having this shadow AI infrastructure operating throughout their business? And these are probably, again, core fundamentals that if organizations are moving to SaaS technologies, they should be getting used to change management. And again, with these things, it's a strong change management exercise to push companies to make sure that they are doing things correctly to keep the data up to date. People are approving workflows, when they're going through the system, ensuring that all that data is correct. Because I mean, what's the point if somebody logs in and they like, how much leave have I got left, and the balance is wrong because they got promoted 6 months ago, but someone didn't put in the system. I mean, some of these things should get paid if you have integrated payroll, because someone will get paid wrong once and they'll get really angry. But it's how do you control things like John mentioned, if someone's using their own version of Chat GPT that could be throwing out wrong responses or incorrect information. How do organizations grapple with that?
Well, and taking your corporate IP and putting it into their training set. That's the other. So there's a double-edged sword of like using those tools, which is why companies do need to have a viable approach to this within their framework. And so that's why it's not totally about business results. It's also about responding to this rogue environment. And I think just prohibiting usage isn't going to work. I think they're going to need to be able to say, here are some tools you can use. And of course, SAP is working hard on that, right? They're going to be providing like that Joule type digital assistant that's essentially you'll have an HR assistant. I personally think that's going to be more helpful for lower level employees. I think like really, really senior folks that know systems inside and out, I think are going to find these tools a little less useful in general. But I think for lower level employees who may not always have access to mentors and senior, I mean, it'd be great if they did, but let's face it, life. For lower level employees, I think this can be very valuable. I think, but the other thing that we have to throw into the mix, and this is where I talk about this sort of concept of AI overreach, is assessing. You also have to assess the consequences of accuracy and outliers, right? Because these tools, these Gen AI tools, they're large language models that are built on probabilistic frameworks. They're not always 100% accurate, and techniques like RAG are a way of infusing like accurate company specific data, but there's not necessarily ways to always control every bit of it. So for example, like when you look at HR, like for example, a meeting summary, if a couple notes are a little bit off, that might be okay, right? But then if it's helping to write up performance reviews, you're gonna have to be really careful there, because like a human will need to review it, and if a human gets too much trust in it, then suddenly they're approving stuff without even really looking at it, because you get busy, you start trusting the system, it mostly gets these right, so just approve that. And it's like you kind of thing where it's like there's a huge difference between like summarizing a informal meeting of colleagues and summarizing a medical visit. In the medical visit, those are really high stakes, right? And I would argue that HR has a lot of very high stakes situations. So even with very clean data, you're going to have to design these systems in a way that maximizes productivity, but also gives you that ability to do that check and say, hey, actually, this performance review is missing something really important, or, we're excluding candidates from this region and it doesn't make sense why we're excluding them. We need to look into that. And so those are the kinds of things I think we're going to see. But of course, the whole thing around automated screening of employees left the station a long time ago. So it's not like AI is bringing that. Companies have been screwing that up for a long time now. So.
But it's kind of like having to have a guardrails for the pre-use of the technology and then the post-use of the technology, just to ensure what's going in is proper data into the right systems, and then validating what you get out of these systems to make sure you're getting the right output. Because as you said, you could have, like, we know of garbage in, garbage out, but this could be a case of clean in, garbage out, and wanting to make sure that you're constantly validating that output to make sure it's correct before you go ahead and use it.
Well, I think the moral of the story is that while it can be an accelerator, because it can accelerate the writing step, instead of lasting 2 days in which you're actually trying to figure out how to write, how to piece it all together, it can actually provide a draft. But it remains, and it should be understood, it remains only a draft. And that draft need to be checked. I don't know. Recently, I was, as you start writing a post on LinkedIn, right now LinkedIn has the AI writing support. Try it. Every time I do, I say, no, that's not what I plan to say. And I don't want the mechanical voice that LinkedIn AI provide. So I let it write it, then I take it and rewrite it. It does make it a bit faster, maybe a bit more grammatically correct, possibly, but hopefully. But beyond that, I cannot really, I don't think anybody can rely on it 100%. And I think it would be the same for any, you see, beyond missing out on the main things, I would be worried about the performance appraisal coming out and including diversity issues, because if it picks from others, there have been cases in the past of recruiting, including diversity issues simply because it was part of the data that was put in. If a performance appraisal pick on what has been produced in the past, there may be issues like that are automatically included in the one output in the future. And that's something that only a human eye will be able to catch at this point in history.
So I have two more very quick points to see what you all think of these. One is that I think one of the mistakes we're making is we're spending too much time trying to figure out how this can do stuff that we do every day. And some of that will be valuable, right? If this thing can help you finish job descriptions in, 25% of the time, like maybe that frees up some valuable times. That's good. But
Yes.
I'd like to have a look at how these machines can actually, what they're good at that humans aren't good at, because in general right now, AI is good at stuff that humans aren't very good at. For example, recognizing patterns in large data sets is something AI is very good at. And you can start to see the impact of that in a positive way on our HR if you start thinking about, wait, what if we turn these systems loose on our HR practices to figure out where the patterns of bias and discrimination are within our organization, right? Because an AI can pick that up, right? I feel like vendors in general are afraid to talk about that and afraid to pursue that. But I think we need to really look at that, because that's the kind of stuff that machines are really good at, is helping to. So let's flip this on its head and say, can we use these systems to identify more diverse applicants that we've missed in the past for various reasons that we've screened out? How can we use the tools to identify things that we have missed? And so to me, that's a really exciting conversation. I personally find that conversation much more exciting than this can help me write a job description faster. I'm sorry, I just think it's more exciting.
That is the value add. A lot of recruiting technology is there to screen out candidates, but then you can often miss out people who have exceptional skills, because some of these other particular skills, like needing a specific qualification or X number of years experience in this role, can exclude someone, but then they bring this whole set of other skills to the table, which are actually extremely valuable. And most times systems will cut that out. Even sometimes a recruiter will, because they're too busy looking for A, B, and C, when X, Y, and Z is what adds the value. And then maybe that's somewhere AI can start to assess resumes from a different perspective than a recruiter or technology can.
Exactly,
nice.
because AI has the computing power to do that, right? And so, like, obviously there's pricing considerations and cost, which we haven't touched on. But what if you were to say to your AI system, show me the top 5 candidates that I haven't looked at, so like you don't have to narrow the database as much. You can expand it. Now the thing is, you probably still need some form of tagging. And so, the most impressive talent-based AI use cases I've seen require a well-constructed skills ontology. And in the past, and Luke, you and I talked about this in the last podcast, for those that want a lot more on this, because we're not going to have time today, the companies that really have clean and effective skills ontologies have a big leg up when it comes to this stuff, because now you can start. I looked at one large services firm that they don't screen by degrees anymore, to Luke's point. Now they're able to look more at skills and dynamic career paths and make recommendations based on that. But to some extent, AI can help keep a cleaner skills ontology, but there's still work involved, and it's not perfect, right? And you have to have a system, because what if you see yours and it's wrong? Like, what is the process by which you fix that? It's not as simple as it sounds, because you can't have everyone in the organization suddenly saying, wait, I'm a genius in underwater basket weaving, and it's like, no, you actually never did that before. So like, there has to be some policies and some things in place, but how do we keep this clean is one of the big things. So,
and you see, there is also the other part. Who is the user of that? Because if the user is the individual in the organization who want to have a gem-like profile that showcase their skills that they all have, I'm not even going to the direction verification and so on, but if they are the only users, and if that is not if AI is used for external recruiting, but it does not necessarily accesses not just candidates, but the internal workforce to see who has the skills we want, then we're wasting information.
The beauty of these kinds of skills ontologies is that it can do a lot for the internal. So for example, like if you take the best case scenario, like I'm not usually painting the best case scenario, but I'll do it. Like what if you started getting pings that said, hey, the system said to you, hey, did you know that there's a training coming up that lines up with your stated professional goals, and here's how you qualify for it, and you can sign up, and by the way, the costs are paid for, or time off has been allocated, or whatever. I mean, that's a really great day for your use of AI, right? I mean, that is so that goes so far beyond like, oh, this saved me some time filing those, employee review report. Like, this is so much more powerful, because now it's like, I didn't know that I could grow my skills in that way. And the system told me, and it was actually fairly accurate because it understood my profile. But look, getting to that point is not going to be some automagical overnight thing. That's the thing that companies have to understand is, however good SAP's functionality happens to be in this area, you can't just sprinkle that on a company and have these wonderful things happen. Like to Luke's earlier thing, you have to really work at this, and so that's I think the big message is, like, maybe you don't install AI right now, maybe it's not ready yet, but you start working on this, you start thinking about this data issue.
Yeah, data's foundational. Yeah.
Well, there are several foundations. There is making to some. I was reading a blog yesterday. I'm not sure by whom. At the end, you need to have clear in your mind what is the problem, a problem you want to solve.
Right.
It's the opposite of design thinking. You don't want to have you want to have clear in your mind what you want to solve. You need to have clean data in that surrounding area, and you need to make sure that the process you're injecting the AI in is also clear in your mind, because otherwise we end up having old employees wasting time on creating a perfect profile while nothing is able to use it. So you need to actually have these three elements: the data, the process, and the problem to solve, and then you can really do something. But I think those three items need to be clear. And
Sherry,
that's a lot to digest.
Sherry, what are your customers saying?
I was just thinking what Kara was saying about the data has to be foundational. I think everyone's ready to jump on AI, but I don't think that they're foundationally there, either with their systems or with their data or with their processes. And then, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Okay, we all want to do AI, but what's the problem you're trying to solve? And I think too often, businesses miss that. So it's hot stuff. Everyone's talking about it, but what's its purpose?
I think customers are going to need vendor guidance here, on some of the vendors maybe aren't very good at, but what are the inner workings of their AI? Like, how does it work? How do they need to set up their data so that the AI can use it effectively to give the right outcomes? So that customers aren't going in the dark and being like, well, let's get our data clean and structured and let's do this. And then they find out later, well, actually, it doesn't quite give out the outputs we wanted because the input's supposed to be in this way. And a lot of vendors, they want to keep their proprietary technology kind of, a little under wraps. But in this case, that might not be the best idea. And that in itself is a change that vendors are going to have to consider as they start to educate the people to be able to use their technology to the most effective way that they can, in the way it was designed to be used.
Good point.
I think that is a fabulous conversation, and I love that my dog is going nuts on the mailman.
I was wondering whose dog that was.
Oh.
That's my puppy who decided the mailman, but fabulous conversation as always. Thank you all for being part of it. Any last word of wisdom to our audience or to us?
Oh, I view this as like more of an evolution than a revolution, but I think it's a very healthy conversation, and it goes back to the same things. It's like, if you want to treat your people well, then all the technology you apply should go into that. And so to me, I think you need to start with your core values and take it from there.
Absolutely.
I think that's great advice. The core value is something we forget too often. Thank you so much. And thank you to our audience who have been listening. And I hope you all got fantastic points. Please make a note and any comment and suggestions and ideas in the comments. And see you next time. Thank you, Jon.
Thanks, Jon.
Thanks, Jon.
Pleasure as always.
Pleasure.